Hi, my name is Jayreid. I'm a psychotherapist in San Francisco, California, and today I want to talk about why it takes time to recover from the attachment wounds of narcissistic abuse. Today I want to discuss why recovery from narcissistic abuse is a process that kind of unfolds over time and often, technically isn't just sort of like, oh, wait, I realized my narcissistic parent was a narcissist, and that say I'm not so bad. That it usually is an iterative, incremental realization to get to that outcome. So I want to just kind of go back to kind of the early situation that we all sort of face in coming into this world, which is that we're very small when we get here, and we're in a world full of much bigger people, creatures, everything. And biologically, we're programmed to know that it's critical we have an adult who's has us specifically in mind and is willing to offer care to us and protection so that we can survive the sort of big bad world that we're sort of helpless to do much about when we first get here, right? An infant cannot feed itself, cannot protect itself, all of those things. And there's this early psychoanalyst slash sort of anthropologist named John Bowlby who really pioneered these ideas. He would listen and take it often face value, the reports he'd hear of profound mistreatment of children by their parents. And that really got him interested in, okay, what are the qualities of the parent-child relationship that yield good outcomes in development versus not good? And he elaborated this theory to sort of say that, what we all want in life is a sense of a secure base, to be able to, in essence, take for granted that there's someone out there who's wise, strong, protective, caring, upon whom we can count on whenever needed. And you can always see this like when a toddler is getting ready, getting their sea legs in the world and exploring, and they might go jaunt off, towards a playground. And maybe if they're running a little bit further than they ever have, they're going to look back at mom or dad, and the expectation and hope is that mom or dad's going to be watching them and happy and for them. And with that boost, they get to keep going. And what Bowlby might say is that that's a reinstantiation of the kid's sense of felt security with his or her parent. He doesn't need the parent, or the child doesn't need the parent to come, cuddle them to feel it. They just need to look at that point to kind of know they get to keep on going and exploring and finding out in the world what's there. Well, as you can imagine, for a child with a narcissistic parent, that experience of a secure base is going to be very, very elusive. And oftentimes when a child finds the parent seemingly happy with him or her, the narcissistic parent, it'll often be because the child is doing or being in a way that the parent believes or perceives to reflect well on the parent, rather than it being about the child's own independent happiness and excitement. So what the child of the narcissistic parent learns is that sense of a secure base is highly conditional on how the parent feels about themselves. It's a real trade-off that the child learns. I can feel a sort of a smidgen of attachment security so long as I'm wholly attendant to the narcissistic parent's needs, or I can feel sort of dismissed, rejected, abandoned, and have myself to myself. It's a catch-22. And in order to survive, again, because due to the dependence of the child at that age, the first option almost, has to be adopted. As one develops in the world, even in this kind of attachment template, the child, then the adolescent, then later the adult, no longer materially needs the parent to survive. But it's almost like it can be very difficult to know that in an experiential way once this kind of attachment template has been sort of I guess I want to say imprinted, but lightly so. These templates are malleable, and I think a lot of change can still be derived even once they're in place. But what the task of recovery from a history of narcissistic abuse in this kind of attachment context involves, in essence, detaching within from the narcissistic parent and finding more suitable attachment figures, people in one's life, finding people to attach to who are genuinely happy when you yourself are happy or content or fulfilled. So the process to begin with of detaching from the internalized narcissistic parent, in this sort of attachment template I was describing, you can think of a child's sense of a parent is usually imbued with this sort of all-powerful quality of the parent. And in sort of with regular parents, that omnipotence that the parent sort of has in the child's eyes is readily relinquished as the child grows and can sort of do for themselves what they once required the parent to do for them. In the case of a narcissistic parent, that power is not easily relinquished. And so the child often learns that to keep the narcissistic parents, I guess I don't want to say happy, but to keep them satiated, it's often necessary to persist this kind of illusion of them being kind of omnipotent or all-powerful. I think that sometimes that mode of perceiving the parent, it can be critical to just survive that parent's capacity for retaliation, abandonment, withdrawal. So that's just sort of necessary, and that's sort of because of the danger posed by the narcissistic parent. In the process of recovery, it almost can maybe sometimes feel as though that perception of the parent gets fossilized, as though they are this sort of being sort of on high, and the child in oneself is felt as the child was in relation to that sort of perceived all-powerful, in this case, narcissistic parent. So can often be a sense of smallness. And I think what is important about all this sort of content and education around the narcissistic abuse is to begin to chip away at that fossilization of, that mom or dad in a narcissistic way was sort of omnipotent, all-powerful, and had to be so. And as this education kind of comes in and over time, iteratively kind of like questions that arrangement and a greater sense of safety as to who one is now, the life circumstances they're in now, mainly being that, they are no longer dependent on the parent. They are, an adult who can meet their own needs. That information does, I think, get in and allow one to, in essence, shift that sort of extremely hierarchical organization of who the self is and who the other is. And as that happens, there's sort of a parity that comes where, a sense of equality is much more possible to exist. And with that equality, I think, comes just a heightened sense of who one really is, out of the sort of distorted sort of pseudo-reality of the attachment template with the narcissistic parent. I wanted to address this topic today because one of the features of recovery from narcissistic abuse is ambivalence, sort of like, wait a minute, it didn't feel good growing up in my household, but then oftentimes other thoughts of like, well, am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Was I too sensitive? Am I being too sensitive now? Is all of this, is all this claiming how bad, quote, mom or dad was actually to my detriment? Am I failing to just get on with living life? So to offer an explanation that sort of gets at those doubts, in essence, that oftentimes can feel as though they have a lot of steam behind them. I wanted to just kind of offer what I really believe and see and have found to be the importance of holding the narcissistic parent's behavior and way of being under its own examination and disabusing oneself of the sanctity of that parent, so that in essence one's own sanctity / well-being gets to kind of be felt and emerge and lived with. Well, as always, thank you for watching today, and in the next video, we'll resume with addressing some of the other beliefs that scapegoated children of narcissistic parents can often hold.